The theme is quite apt, which is the urgency for human capital development action. The development and utilization of human capital is pivotal for economic productivity and growth, as no nation can attain sustainable economic growth without developing the human resources to drive such growth. There is no doubt that the time to start action towards setting a path for human capital development in Nigeria is now. There is a need to shape and reshape policy agendas and advocate strongly for action to advance human capital development in this country. Nigeria's worrisome and disappointing human capital index informs this when we project our productive children born today will be as members of the future workforce. Despite an improvement from 0.34 in the 2018 Human Capital Index scores to 0.36 in this year, 2020 scores in the World Bank's released Human Capital Index of countries around the world, Nigeria continues to score very low in the Human Capital Index ranking. Sadly, the implication of this is that Nigerian children given birth to in the present socioeconomic circumstances have very slim chances of competing favorably with other children from other climes in the nearest future. Such children have little chances of living up to their full potentials due to the current deplorable and unacceptable state of various socioeconomic development parameters. Apart from the low human capital indices, human capital development realities in Nigeria is reflected in the various very poor and negative indices observable in the country, such as high child and maternal mortality and high rates of stunting in children as a result of malnutrition. There are currently over 13.2 million basic education school-age children out of school, out of which 8 million are girls. Over 91 million people live in extreme poverty, and this is about half of the country's population. Unemployment rate is 23%, and the further 20% of the labor force are underemployed. That means they work in low productivity, low-income jobs with no job or income security, as well as numerous other socio-economic factors that lie in a despicable state. A paradigm shift at this time is necessary in order to ensure Nigeria's relevance in the emerging global economy, which is gradually shifting to knowledge-based sectors. Human capital development needs to be prioritized by both policymakers in government and private sector players, as well as every concerned stakeholder. A healthy population and a functioning labor force are crucial to drive this change we are talking about. In taking action, there is need to take stock of previous and current commitments, reflecting on socio-economic development initiatives in relevant sectors across the country. This is necessary in order to enunciate key and penetrating reasons that are sensitive enough to inspire interest and spark up an human capital development crusade by important actors. This is also important in order to identify necessary evidence that will spur stakeholders towards supporting the human capital development campaign. Human capital development has components in various sectors, including health, education, agriculture, and so on, and can impact negatively on economic growth, productivity of labor, demographic dividend, etc., with devastating effects and consequences such as poverty, insecurity, low productivity, slow economic growth, weak health systems, among many others. Advancing human capital development requires investing massively in people through nutrition, healthcare, quality education, jobs, and skills. It is therefore important to collaborate widely in order to generate a joint action that is strong enough to attract attention and bring about the required improvements in Nigeria's commitment in developing its human capital. I want to assure you all that making a case for human capital development is a right step in the right direction, as it will elucidate implications of Nigeria's present response to important developmental issues of importance, such as health, education, nutrition, technology, and skills development. Improving this would have an overall positive energy in the socio-economic landscape of the country. I therefore welcome you to this forum in charting a course for a better Nigeria where everyone can fully achieve their potentials. I wish you all a very fruitful deliberation. Thank you very much.
Many thanks to you, distinguished, for that powered welcome remark. And
Thank you.
There can be a better time to have this conversation. And he has clearly highlighted the various components and issues that we need to address to get the conversation on. On that note, it's going to be my pleasure to welcome next on the agenda, laying the background to the conversation, which will be taken by Dr. Gafar Alawode, and also a co-convener of the network. Dr. Gafar Alawode, welcome on board as we laying the background to the HCDN and creating the sense of urgency. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Anu, and thank you very much, distinguished, for that very powerful welcome remarks. I take it as a keynote address because that address a lot of issues. Probably before I go to my presentation on laying the background, I would like to take the audience through the structure of this section. Of course, the distinguished has done the opening remark, and I'm going to lay the background for the Human Capital Development Network and the topic, the theme for today. After which we are going to have a keynote address from Olumide Okunola of the World Bank, who will be speaking with us around Human Capital Development Vision in Nigeria. Then there will be a question and answer section to make it a very participatory one. Then we'll be having a breakout section because we want to make it participatory. We want to look at how to gather the necessary evidence for human capital development action. So we are going to have a 30-minute breakout section. We are going to break into 3 groups. Then we'll convene, after which we will be discussing next steps as well. So back to the assignments given to me at this moment. I will be making presentation on the background, providing background information about the group called Human Capital Development Network, and introduction to the central theme of this meeting. So I'll quickly run through this outline. I'll be looking at why Human Capital Development Network, what is the objective of the network, what's the management arrangement. Then we'll now look at how do we create a sense of urgency for human capital development. So in terms of human capital development, you listened to the distinguished earlier on. It gave us a lot of background information. As defined by Human Capital Development Project of the World Bank, human capital is all the knowledge, skills, and health that people accumulate throughout their life, which enable them to actualize their potential as a members of the society. I think fundamentally that is what human capital is all about. And you agree with me, like the distinguished said earlier on, it requires investments in key areas such as nutrition, healthcare, quality education, job and skills throughout our people's life. You know, this area has collective implication for our well-being, especially in the area of economic growth, productivity of labor, poverty reduction, security, demography, and so on. And human capital development is a policy objective that has implication for socio-economic future of our society. So whatever we do or we don't do in terms of human capital development investment has huge implication for the socio-economic future of our society, including the generation unborn. So what is the picture in Nigeria? Dr. Olumide will come and give us a bigger picture, but just to quickly give an highlight here, the picture is very, very disappointing in the sense that Nigeria is not faring well in the Committee of Nations when it comes to human capital development. The 2018 human capital development shows Nigeria score 152 out of 157, and with percentage score of like 34%. What does this mean? It means that the child born in Nigeria is only going to actualize his or her a third of his potential. I liken it to installed capacity of industry. When an industry is not performing very well, it has very low, it's operating at a very low installed capacity. So you can say Nigerian people are operating at 1/3 of their installed capacity or potential, which is not good enough. That's a huge implication, which will be seen as we move on. But is Nigeria doing any, is the government doing anything at all? Yes. There's a policy response from the federal government. The National Economic Council that have set up a core working group on human capital development. They have started engaging the states, but we think we still need to do a lot. We believe there's no sense of urgency yet. We are still treating human capital development as something nice to do, not necessarily something which is very, very crucial. We should be at the front burner. So it is very important for us to do anything that we're able to do to engender human capital development. Now, let's quickly look at why human capital development network as a structure. When we look at human capital development critically, we said earlier on, distinguished corroborated it, that many actors, many sectors are involved, from nutrition to health to education to livelihood and many other aspects of our life. But unfortunately, these are people that hardly work together. And it's very, very important for us to work together to advocate collectively and individually so that collectively we'll be able to make progress on the human capital development. And then, so Human Capital Development Networks was conceived to harness and align input of wide array of actors working in different sectors to work together so that we're able to produce synergy. So that, the truth of the matter is that we cannot make progress very well in nutrition or health when we're having problems with education. If there's problem, if we're investing in education and people are poorly nourished, children are poorly nourished, we are not going to achieve results. If we try to build skill, knowledge economy, in a situation where human capital development is poor, we are not going to succeed. So it's very important for us to work together. So at Human Capital Development Networks, what is our understanding of human capital development? Concepts might mean different things to different people, different level of understanding. But our own thinking is that we are looking at the whole life cycle approach to human capital development, starting from children, even children yet unborn, level of investment in health and nutrition has implication for how educatable are they. Because when there's problem with education and nutrition, even when children go to school, they find it difficult to learn and learn well. So we want investment in health and nutrition so that children are educatable, and so that when we supply the quality education, they become educated. That is the thinking. That is our theory of change. But we are not stopping there. We are of the opinion that when children and adults are well educated and knowledgeable, they need to acquire necessary skills of life to work. And so when they acquire these skills, they become highly employable. At a point, somebody said probably the problem of unemployment in Nigeria might be more of a problem of unemployability rather than being unemployed, being unemployable rather than whether the job is there or not. But I think it's both. People need to be employable, and when you provide the necessary employment, they become gainfully employed in the society. Then we have the opinion that when we have a critical mass of the citizens that are gainfully employed, is bound to lead to shared prosperity because people are gainfully employed. They have high income for the work that they are doing. There's going to be improvement in security because people are very busy doing productive work. They don't have time to be involved in banditry. They don't have time to be involved in insurgency and all those vices in the society. And their peace will reign in our society. And the more desired demographic dividend will be achieved. This is the theory of change of human capital as believed by the Human Capital Development Network. And that was why we have the opinion that it is very, very important for us to work together. And that is why we have people from different walks of life, part of Human Capital Development Network. What is the objective development? What is the objective of human capital development? The central objective is to forge consensus and collaboration towards engendering human capital development as a policy objective at all levels in Nigeria and raise the accountability bar for investment towards advancing the agenda. In terms of specific areas, we are looking at deepening knowledge of our key stakeholders on human capital development. People will need to know what is it, why is it important, and what is their role in human capital development. Then as another specific objective is to forge consensus for robust policy advocacy so that collectively, whether we are working in the area of nutrition, area of health, area of livelihood, area of education, we are looking at our main thrust as human capital development. So when we are engaging the key policy makers, we are making very strong case for human capital development. If we are going to see the governor on issue of education, we should let you know that education has implication for human capital development. If it is nutrition we are discussing, we should let him know that nutrition has huge implication for human capital development, so that collectively we see it as a central policy objective. Again, investment is very, very key, very, very crucial. So we should work collectively to stimulate both public and private investment in the area of human capital development. Then accountability is very, very important. It's not only about more money for development, it's about more development for the money as well. So how do we raise the accountability bar so that we are able to hold all the stakeholders accountable? First is to improve the transparency, and then for us to be using information gathered to answer questions so that there will be value for money in the utilization of resources as well. The last objective there, which relate to what we're actually discussing today, is to generate and use evidence on current state of human capital development, including implication of business as usual. We need to really generate evidence of what are the implications of whether we invest or we don't invest in human capital development. And we should look at different scenarios. If we continue with business as usual, for instance, what are the implications? If we step up in terms of investment, what are the implications? And if you adopt a very, very aggressive investment, what are the implications? And this is what we are actually discussing here today, and we'll be discussing more of that. And then in terms of management arrangement of human capital development, like I said earlier on, we have it draws its membership from different walks of life, like I said earlier on, but we need some people to coordinate, so there are some organizations that constitute the core group, like DJI Consult, Lisdell and K, that form the secretariat, which rotate among them. Of course, the core group is responsible for the secretariat function, admitting people, and disseminating information about the network. And what is very central about the approach for the network is a very participatory one, and like we see this afternoon, we want to develop a robust case for human capital development, and we are doing a consultative forum so that every voice is heard in the creating a sense of urgency for human capital development. Now, a few slides on how do we create a sense of urgency for human capital development. You will agree with me, and I believe all of us, many of us in this forum, we've been part of development work for many years, and part of what we do in development is essentially change management. That is what we do. in development and change leadership. That is our work. But if you look at the theory of change management that you see around that inform action in the area of change management, the starting point is to create a sense of urgency. There's no point, nobody will listen to us, the stakeholders will not act if there is no reason for them to act. So the starting point in the journey of transforming the human capital development landscape in Nigeria is to create a sense of urgency, and that is what we are doing. And we are going to do that by identifying and use evidence that will spur stakeholders to take necessary action. There are times we articulate, we create a sense of urgency, we think we are creating a sense of urgency, we are designing the problem statement, but we are only talking to ourselves. We are giving out data that will not move anybody. So we want to do things differently because we have the opinion that to turn things around, we have to do different things and we have to do things differently. So it is not enough for us to sit down and articulate the problem statement by saying this is the problem, this is the problem. Those people that are going to take action, do they see it as a problem? That is the narrative we want to change. That is why we are discussing. That's why we did not even just engage a consultant that will sit in the corner of his room and develop a problem statement for human capital development in Nigeria. We really want to articulate a case that is broad enough, that is we actually stimulate key stakeholders to take necessary action. Then we'll be able to develop a very, very robust case for human capital development, a multidimensional one that will be able to make a case, make an economic case, for instance, that if you invest in human capital development, this is going to be the economic outlook in the next few years. If you invest in human capital development, this is going to be the implication on security. Or if you don't invest, this is going to be the implication on security. It's going to be the implication on conflict, level of employment, poverty level. Nigeria is seen as a poverty headquarters of the world. What is going to be the trend if you invest well in human capital development? What are we going to see in the next 10 or 15 years? Then in terms of demographic dividend, having the population structure that is able to support economic growth. What are the implications? Those are the things, the initial conversation that we'll be having this afternoon during the breakout section, and you will see the questions we'll be asking when we are doing this. I'll just quickly touch on our own approach. So when we, at the breakout section, we'll be divided into 3 groups. One group on economy and employment, another one on poverty and security, and the last one on demographic dividend and conflict. And the question we'll be trying to answer is that what are the implications of human capital development for each of these dimensions that we mentioned earlier on. So as participants, we enjoy you to please contribute your knowledge as much as possible. And then we'll be asking ourselves, what further evidence do we need to go and generate so that I will be able to make a very robust economic case, a conflict case, other cases as well. Then we'll be discussing how should we use this evidence. Then we'll be looking at what are the opportunities and challenges that we envisage during this use of evidence. So please, on this note, I would like to thank you very much for listening, and I strongly enjoy you to participate actively during the breakout session. Thank you very much. Aanu.
Okay, many thanks, Dr. Gafar Alawode, for that presentation.
No? Zoom meeting.
But please mute their microphone if you are not speaking, please. Thank you very much. So thank you so much, Dr. Gafar, for that presentation in which you've given us the clear objective.
Good morning.
The clear of the network. I'm not sure that Olumide, is he on right now? Okay. So if Olumide is not yet online, he's not yet joining us, can we go into brief and answer, please? If you want to ask question, please, can you raise your hand? If you have any clarity or question, please, you raise your hand, please. You can see the icon For raise your hand, you see it at the icon to raise your hand below. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Can I have Usman bin Affan? Yeah. Usman bin Affan. Please go ahead and ask your question. You can unmute yourself now.
Okay.
Are you listening?
Can hear you clearly. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, and for his wonderful presentation. I have learned a lot of things, especially in aspect of or the in the aspect of human capital development.
Hello, we can't hear you any longer. Hello? Okay, so it seems we've lost the audio from Usman. Okay, can we have Abubakar Bichi Al-Hassan?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, this is quite educative and a wonderful presentation. But I don't know, maybe from my background, the way when you are looking at a human capital development, you need to understand the poverty level of the populace. Understanding the poverty level of the populace will give you an insight of what parameters one need to bring up to develop such populace. Because when you look at it now, as we are speaking, how many the ratio of people that cannot even cater for their meals, what to eat, not talk of their education of their what, not talk of to do with health issue. You can find people going to the hospital, they cannot even afford a card fee. What I mean by card fee, the money they will pay to obtain a card. Not even talking of the consultation, talk less of buying drugs, talk less of if somebody is happens to be admitted. You will find a lot of people suffering. So what are the yardstick? What are the parameters to look into? Because there are certain parameters to put together in order for somebody to talk about human capital development. In a situation whereby an individual cannot even acquire what to eat or cannot even have what to eat, talk less of paying to school children, talk less of buying drugs when one is sick. So what are we talking about? So I thought you look from that aspect because it's when first of all one has to be satisfied that somebody has to be satisfied, somebody has to be educated, somebody has to be healthy before you can think of other parameters of human capital development. So I don't know from the perspective you come in to put more light into this aspect I'm talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abubakar Buchi. And it's actually a very apt question in terms of how do we relate poverty and ensure that the poverty index of citizens is considered as we speak about human capital development. In part of the issues that Dr. Olumide Okunola will be speaking to, we definitely include poverty because one of the cardinal points of human capital development talks about employability, and we talk about the economic growth of the nation, of the people, because there's no way you can have a sustainable economic growth or development if the population is not productive. And that is why if we also listen to what the senator in his welcome address mentioned, he mentioned the issue of like nutrition are key to to every individual attaining their maximum potential in life. Dr. Gafar also mentioned the other factors and key issues that are actually needed. And that is one of the reasons why the network is together. Like in Nigeria, we've been doing so many things, but haven't been able to put them together as a nexus connecting. How well are they connecting if they are connecting? And if they are not properly connecting, what do we do to ensure that the issues are properly connected and we are able to get to where we need? And that's why we said we need to create a sense of urgency. We need to do something different. Should it be business as usual, or should we do it differently? On that note, it's going to be my pleasure to bring on board Dr. Olumide, who will be taking us on the Human Capital Development Vision for Nigeria. Thank you, Dr. Olumide. Over to you.
Thank you, Anu. I'm having some challenges here. Please just give me a minute to just complete my my setup.
Okay, that works very well. Okay, so while Dr. Olumide is trying to set this up, I also have Rukaya at the lights hands up. Rukaya, can we have you? Rukaya, your hand is up, but we can't, it seems your audio is off.
While we're trying to have Rukaya, let me quickly respond to that very important point on the poverty and implication for human capital development. So part of what we'll be doing this afternoon as the breakout section is to look at implication of basic human capital development for a number of areas, including poverty. Poverty is both the cause and consequences of poor human capital development investment. So you're absolutely correct. So part of what we'll be doing together, and your inputs will be highly appreciated, is to look at, if you want to make a case to the governor, for instance, for human capital development, how do we use poverty to illustrate that and say, if we invest in health, nutrition, and others, this is how we are going to improve poverty. But at the same time, to tell Mr. Governor, whoever we are talking to, that poverty is a major hindrance for improving our human capital development. So this is a very important point you've made, and I would like to enjoy you to contribute further during the breakout section. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Dr. Gafar, for that clarity. And Dr. Olumide, are you available now? Okay, so it's still
before Dr. Olumide come in, please. I will want to just respond briefly to what the last speaker explained. Can I go ahead, Ma?
Okay, just 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, you see, fundamentally, when you are looking at it, no matter what we are going to do here, no matter what we will deliberate and come up with a communique, the problem is the issue of implementation and the issue of when he was talking about the governor or the governor or the government. Most of the government policies, there are what we call misplacement of priority. Apart from that, there are government normally appoint people that doesn't know what really is on ground. For example, now you take somebody that doesn't understand what is poverty, what is economic human capital development, and you appoint him to head an agency that is meant for that. So that's some of the problem. So in as much as we will come up with something, then there should be commitment from government of putting appropriate people to the appropriate position to carry its own policies. Otherwise, Nigerian government or Nigerian society will continue to get it wrong. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that additional insight to that conversation, that we need to put the round peg in a round hole. Dr. Olumide, are we ready?
Yes, we are. You know, I've been sitting down for almost 4 hours. I needed to stretch my legs. You know, my apologies. And moreover, the conversation we've been having, I think, is just as important as well. You know, so first I would like to thank DGI Consults for asking me to share a few thoughts with people on this call. I won't be saying much, or I won't be saying things that you have not heard before. In fact, if you are my colleague working in the same space, some of the things I'm going to say today would have been things that you might have heard from me. You know, to the extent that sometimes I become a bit careful in speaking now, because I'm beginning to sound like these are things we have to do anyway. You know, please, I don't know if the host can give me screen sharing rights, because I don't have, I'm unable to share my screen.
You can go ahead now.
Thank you. You know, so just one of the comments I would first like to make right off the bat is that I will ask colleagues to please check out the latest Human Capital Index or the Human Capital Development Report released by the World Bank 2 Thursdays ago. If you are familiar with discussions around human capital, we had our Human Capital Index released for the first time in 2018, and then the second version in 2020. The one in 2018 ranked countries according to a combination of indices, which we will be discussing on this call. At that point, Nigeria scored a productivity factor of 36% or 34% or 0.34, which makes Nigeria ranked 152 out of 157 countries. In the 2020 latest report, there was no index, you know, but there was that factoring. We moved up 2 basis points, so which is 0.36 or 36%. I will be discussing a bit more about that in the course of this presentation. In fact, I'm probably going to spend most of the time just looking at what that Human Capital Index is and what it means for Nigeria. And like I always say, the issue of human capital is really about the slide that you are looking at in front of you. Where do we want Nigeria to be in a decade or two from now? Do we want a Nigeria rising? Do we want a Nigeria that is floating, that is so-so? Or do we want a Nigeria that is business as usual? Let's make no mistake. The business as usual trajectory is where we are today. to be where Indonesia was 3 years ago would need us to take extraordinary actions. And I guess that's the basis for the title of today's webinar, that sense of urgency. Because if we go business as usual, I'm sure some of those things would have been discussed. It means X million of people will be out of jobs. We'll have X number of kids continue to die. X number of kids will continue to be stunted. That would be business as usual. So I do hope that by the end of this, my session and the work groups we're going to have, we would have agreed on a set of common policy actions or thematic interventions that can move Nigeria to Nigerianizing. I think that is what I really would want to do this afternoon. You know, but it's always important to begin by saying, this is where we are today. We have a situation where COVID-19 has upended some of our best plans. If you look at the economy, that is already taking a hit. We were, if you recall, 2 years ago, Nigeria was in a recession because of some innovative policy actions. We grew out of recession, and you have a GDP of about 8%. That is going to contract now to about 3%. And those were estimates as at April. It might still even go further down. So clearly, despite our best intentions, COVID has hit, and the economy in turn has also taken a hit. But it's not just the economy that's taken a hit. The conversation just before I came online was about poverty. So, so you have reduction in economic growth, but we're also already seeing increase in poverty. But there's also a new kind of poverty that is increasing, and that is the urban poor. It's probably not the occasion to begin to talk about that implication now, but very clearly you have an increase in poverty, and especially an increase in the urban poor. And just today and yesterday, if you're on different charts, you see the kind of security situation that is causing. If you live in Abuja or any of the major cities, there's a spike in break-ins, kidnappings, and things like that. So what we're talking about is a kind of cycle that affects everybody, really. You know, so, but going to take a broader view of the economy itself, even pre-COVID, where does Nigeria sit? As you can see on the chart above, that's Nigeria today. And why is this chart important? Almost all countries in the world, in terms of economic growth, grow in a sequential manner. So countries begin from agriculture, and then they move to industrialization, then they move to services. But we have noticed that there's been a balk in that trend by some countries who have the same kind of economy with Nigeria. These are countries that have jumped industry. So they moved from agriculture, jumped industry, and moved to services. So you have India. So the economy of India has been fueled by growth in ICT. Now, in addition to ICT, you have healthcare. So whilst Nigeria too is seeing such a growth in services, It's not the kind of productive services. So a driver who drives a commercial bus is in services. But that's different from an IT guru who does coding, who develops softwares and things like that. They're both in services, but one is more productive than the other. So if you can look at Nigeria, yes, services have increased, like some of its peers, but the productivity of services in Nigeria has not increased. And so this is what we call a structural transformation. My apologies for spending time on this, but I think this is important. And I think this really is the basis of our discussion. For services to grow, for productive services to grow, you need to have made considerable investments in your human capital development. It means that you have invested in brains of kids who are able to become IT gurus, who are able to work in healthcare, who are able to work in engineering, amongst other things. And yet, this is meant to be the growth trajectory of Nigeria. Services is the cornerstone of our economic growth. What are we doing, or how are we doing to be able to make sure that this happens? That in itself is the challenge. That's why the human capital development or human capital accumulation is important. And that's why it is urgent that we do something about it. Another feature that we should note as we have this conversation is what we call the youth bulge. So today, Nigeria stands on the threshold of reaping bigly what we call a demographic dividend. In other words, where you have a huge number of youths who have reduced fertility rates, then they are able to save more money when they are in productive jobs. And several countries across the world have been able to reap a dividend from this kind of population age structure. But whilst we have a youth bulge, our total fertility rate still remains the same. The number of girls not going to school is not even reducing. Our under 5 mortality rate is still high. So reaping or harnessing a demographic dividend is perhaps becoming problematic unless we are able to make some interesting decisions or agree on a number of actions or interventions on calls like this. Just to mention that several of the things that we will see is dependent on how much countries spend on human capital. How much public financing do you spend on health? How much public financing do you spend on education? It is when public financing is proportionate to the kind of priority you give to human capital, that's when you see a turnaround. So what do we see if we look at health? Public financing as a percentage of GDP for health is perhaps one of the lowest in the world. I'm using the word perhaps because I want to be charitable to my country. Otherwise, I should just simply say it is the lowest. If we spend 0.5% of our GDP public financing for health, then this is lower than sub-Saharan Africa average, and much lower for countries who are in the same economic bracket with Nigeria. In fact, the other chart shows that when Nigeria actually was making a lot of money, the amount of public financing for health never really went up the roof. So when we had money, we were not even spending on health. If you look at the highest we ever got to was about 1.4 during the oil boom days of 2003, 2004. That was the highest we went. You know, I mean, of course, at a fair point, people would argue that, well, we really don't have money as such. Yes, we don't, but it's important, like I mentioned earlier, that even when we had money, when the economy was buoyant and we had to rebase the economy, we were not, we never really went beyond 1.4, 1.5 public financing for health. So, now, just take a granular view of our human capital challenge in Nigeria. As I mentioned in my introductory remark, when the first human capital index was released, Nigeria was 34, 0.34. And essentially, probably also useful to define what we mean by human capital. It's a combination of capabilities of people's health, skills, and education. Saying, for instance, if we take a child, a boy or a girl today, and based on the amount of education, the amount of health this child will get over the next 18 years, if we prorate it, we can determine how that child will be in 18 years' time based on the quantum or the quantity of education available and the quantity of health available to that girl or boy today. So it means that in countries like Cuba, if you, based on the amount of health and education that child will get, the productivity of that child will be in a factor of about 0.80. So that means you're going to get, that person will be almost 80 to 90% productive. Or if you go to Singapore, which is like the number one, now based on the amount of education and health that person will get today, in 18 years' time, that person will be 80% productive. In Nigeria, 2 years ago, it was 34%, which is one of the lowest in the world. The latest figures is showing that, yes, we have risen a bit to 36%. Well, I don't know what you think, but if you are to write an exam, and even any exam, no matter what country of the world you are, 50% is usually pass mark. You know, scoring 36 for those who went to medical school is almost a bad fail. You know, and I guess again that's what ties to the topic of this webinar, creating a sense of urgency. You know, and one of the things that we've done at the bank is to say, look, if let's say we were able to increase the productivity of our children to even as high as 50, the size of the GDP will be a whole lot more than what it is today. Going back to the slides I shared about services, because then you would have a lot more people in the workforce who are more productive. Because right now, what are you going to do with a productivity factor of 36%? By the way, let me also mention this. That's a national average. I am sure if you do a disaggregated kind of data mining, this might be much, much lower in some other states of the Federation. So this is a crisis. I'm not sure there's any need to begin to break up each of the factors. But if you look at stunting, almost 40% of our kids are stunted. And that's one of the variables that adds up to the human capital index. Of course, why wouldn't the stunting be a key part of it? Don't forget that a stunted brain does not have medicine. Once that brain is stunted, it is stunted and is stunted like that for life. The child will be okay, but in a world of innovation, in a world of creativity, in a world of fine skills, it's not likely that that child will be able to function in the productive services sector. It is clear that a stunted child would not be a software engineer. And you can see the numbers. Same thing with our under 5 mortality rate. Education is particularly worse. So what the education variable is saying is if we add up based on the data we have, all of the education that this child will get till when she's 18 based on what we have today, it will be equivalent to maximum 5 years of schooling. Maybe you didn't hear me right. Let me repeat it so that we're all clear. So you are saying that this child that we're using to measure the index, what is the total number of education from birth to 18 years old? And that's what we will use to determine the human capital. In Nigeria, the total is 5 years only of education. The worst part of it is, you see, it's even good if that child is not in school. But what we're saying now is, even when the child is in school, spend 6 years in primary school, by the time you assess the education that that person has had, it's less than 2 years. I know I will get questions from that, but you can't fight the data. Some of these are straightforward, just in terms of adult survival rates and all of that. So essentially, when you add stunting, education, under 5 mortality rates, and adult survival rate, putting all of that together was what got us to 36, the productivity of 0.36 on the human capital index. So, I mean, let's just move to, so what can we do? What should we be doing? So if we now unpacked all of the interventions possible and say, okay, to drive human capital development, the things that you need to do, let's break it down into 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is everything that is here. What are those things on health and nutrition? What are those things on education? What are those things in the labor force? This is it. And I think, I know I've taken some time, I will just end with this. And on this slide, there is nothing here that is rocket science. There's nothing here that requires us going. What is here is something that even if as a state governor, you probably don't need any additional financing from federal to begin to do this. What does it take to fund primary health care in the state, at the state level? What does it cost to ensure that you have that are able to give family planning programs? But people don't even go there because the place is just too dirty and they don't have light. Sorry, what does it take to just ensure that we have teachers who are graded accordingly on the NCE certification? I've been to many government houses that the amount of money used to be in that government house can train or retrain X number of teachers. So essentially, what I'm saying is these interventions are simple, but we need people, especially people on this call, to be able to hold our decision and policymakers accountable. Somebody mentioned just before I came online to say, well, the problem is that people who are put in positions of authority don't even understand what it takes. I agree with you. But I think that is where our advocacy and our information becomes important. So that if we know all of these things, maybe we can be a coach to that political appointee who doesn't know his left from his right. But let us make no mistake about it. If we do not do any of these things, it's only a matter of time that this thing will blow up in our hands. But then, if we do, even if we just do 30% of this, we will become one of the richest and most productive countries on the sub-Saharan African continent. Dr. Gafar, thank you so much, and back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Olumide, for that wonderful presentation in which you've actually highlighted where Nigerian is and what we should be doing. Because we are also conscious of time, and we'll go to question and answer. I know a lot of us have questions to ask, and while you are speaking, Dr. Olumide, quite a number of people actually have their questions in the chat room. I will just start from there before I go to the audience. For the audience, please, you are free to raise your hands up. I can see Abubakar Buchi Al Hassan. Please do feel free to raise your hand using the icon. But while we are doing that, I just want to bring to your attention some of the questions that we have at in the room. So somebody said, I think it's important for the coalition to establish a baseline for poverty index of the country so that the data can be used for further engagement. I'm saying this because at the moment, I don't think there's anything data available that speaks about the total number of those living below the poverty line in the country. Dr. Olumide, I'm aware there's a data, but I'll throw the question to you still. We have another question from Haisha Ahmad that says, we are not aware of the National Economic Council. Where are they and what are they doing? And are they just set up? I totally agree with Abubakar. We have series of programs, which says a lot about what we are trying to work on. The challenge is implementation. How do we make our government implement these policies and law? So she's talking about how do we move from rhetorics to activity to action. And I think, Aisha, that is where we are here. And in the concluding phase of Dr. Olumide, he talked about we CSOs and the other non-state actors need to hold the state actors accountable and to action. Yeah, I have Yusuf Imam. So what we need most is not programs or policies, rather the implementation and need assessment at the inception of projects and programs. Yes, very well, we need that, and I know we use that. That's why we need to move from move towards evidence-based implementation programming. Aisha Ahmed also said that my concern is we decide to do too much of meetings and talk than acting. Very sorry, but we need more action at the grassroots than conferences. This is my candid opinion. Let's start agreeing on how to achieve the series of analysis. Thanks so much. And Chidera Chuku said, participate in the research. Okay, thank you, everyone. I think the most important question here, I think the question I'm going to throw back to Dr. Olumide will be the question about the Economic Council, where they are and what they're doing. And I know that last week, a couple of days ago,
there was a meeting by the National Economic Council Working Group on HCD. I'm sure Dr. Olumide will give us a little brief about that. Then also the issue about the poverty baseline. I know that there was a time that we had some, and we had. What is the current status about that, Dr. Olumide? It would be great if you can share your thoughts about that. So once you are done with that, we'll go to the next round of questions. Dr. Olumide, over to you, please.
Thank you for those questions. Let me start with the one on the National Economic Council. The National Economic Council is actually a constitutional statutory organ of the government. The National Economic Council is chaired by the Vice President of Nigeria. All state governors are members of the National Economic Council. And in Nigeria, they meet once every month. Yes, I was privileged to participate in the last meeting of NEC 2 Thursdays ago, where we made a presentation to the Vice President and all governors on state of human capital development in Nigeria. A secretariat, and that secretariat houses what is called a core working group on human capital development. I would ask that people on this call follow up with Dr. Gafar so that you can be introduced to Mrs. Yosola Akinbi, who is the coordinator for the core working group on human capital development. Some of you might have attended CWG organized about 3 weeks ago with all and NGOs. They are very clear that they will need to work with CSOs and NGOs. And Mrs. Akinbi, whom I know very well, is working intensely with CSOs and NGOs. In fact, later on today, she has a meeting with parliamentarians across the country. So I would advise that you please reach out to Dr. Gafar to know more about the work of the CWG, which is housed in the Secretariat of the National Economic Council. Second is poverty data. I'm happy if there's one data that's available, it is poverty data. In fact, one of the things I wanted to share was the poverty data that has emerged even during COVID that we did, the World Bank did with the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. So there is real-time poverty data available. Some of it we even have, as I said, post-COVID during the COVID period. I'm happy to share the latest poverty results with Dr. Gafar to share with the rest of the team. But this is something that is very is measured almost in real time. The number of surveys that are just being rounded up now, so we have real data, and also surveys that accept us to capture this. I think that'll be all for me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Olumide, for that. And thank you so much. So everyone, we're going to be, the network will be giving us more information about, update about the core working group of the National Economic Council. And also once we have the latest poverty index and the other report will be shared among the members and the other participants on this call this afternoon. So the second round of questions before we go to the group work, which will last for just about 25 minutes. We're going to take this in less than 5 minutes, thereabout. While we were registering, some people actually asked some questions which we will intend to ask. With the trend of unemployment and economic recession in Nigeria, what is the future like? So that is a question which I believe to go and develop a sense of urgency. Second one, we have what are the points, at what point will MDAs reflect the urgency of HCD vision in their respective place and way of working? Also, like you said, all members, like Olumide said, they will have the National Economic Council and the various structures on ground, which various parastatals are part of it. And like he has earlier said, we need to ensure that these government parastatals all live up to their sense of responsibility. And that's why we need to hold them accountable. And we can only hold them accountable if we actually define and strategize on how to engage them. And Luis Ahelta is advocating that how can we maintain their disabilities on this? So we need to be, so she's bringing up the issue of inclusion, that the process needs to be highly inclusive, that as we talk about human capital development, we should leave no one behind. Then burning issues on youth entrepreneurship and life building skills should be discussed. Thank you, Yusuf, for that. And that will be discussed under the group 1, where we have economic and employment. The effects of the unemployment among your youth in Sub-Saharan Africa is growing daily. What are the steps towards addressing them? That's coming from Sunday. That also will be addressed during the group work, because in the group work, we're going to be looking at where we should be going and how we should present the sense of urgency to our various stakeholders. We also have from Babakushi, what are the clear lines of divergence and linkages between human capital development and social protection? I will divert that question to Dr.
Is there any audio? I'm not getting any. I'm not getting.
Hello? Hello? Yeah, so the next question will be, the last question that we'll receive from Muhammad Sana is need to empower person living with disability. For millions of people living with disability that can be, need to empower people living with disability. Yeah, so there's also the question of people living with disability coming on board. So at this point, after taking this question, Dr. Olumide, do you have any response to any of this question, Dr. Gafar? Who's going to go first? Dr. Olumide, go first at any of your response to any of these questions on the screen, please.
So just for me to mention that I would like to respond on the one trend of unemployment and economic recession. What is the future like? The future depends on the policy actions we take today. Whilst there is unemployment now, it would only worsen in the next 10 to 20 years if we don't take corrective actions now. So my point is, we haven't even seen anything yet, because where you have a population explosion, what then happens is this huge unemployment that will even go higher. So I do believe that there's a need to begin to take certain policy actions which will allow us to address the current unemployment rate. But that is only one piece of the equation. If you have population growth continuing rising unabated, I don't know if you can hear me though.
Yes, I can hear you. I hope others can also hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So just in summary, I think some of the points I've laid out in terms of harnessing the demographic dividend will be critical for the future. Because if we don't take any action there, then rather than reap a dividend, it will be a demographic disaster. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Olumide. It's going to be a disaster if we do not take action right now. So on that note, because of time, I want to call on Dr. Gafar Alawode.
Okay, thank you very much, Aanu, and thank you very much, Olumide, for that wonderful presentation and answering questions as usual in a very, very enlightening way. So I just want to respond to one of the questions from Baba Kushishi around linkage between social protection and human capital development. It's a very important question as far as I'm concerned. And I want to reiterate that for each of the elements of the human capital development that we are talking about, there is social protection is inherent in them. Let me talk about health. The question of social protection in health is very, very, very germane. And one of the aspects of the social protection we look at in health is a financial protection. And that is why Olumide talked about basic care provision fund. Part of the aim is financial protection, which is linked to social protection as well. And even the health insurance that are being promoted is about advancing the financial protection in health. So when we look at the policy options for each of the core areas which Nigeria want to prioritize in human capital development, social protection is inherent in them, and that is why the society is very important to ensure that that social protection aspect is actually very, very addressed. Then there are a couple of questions around people living with disability. I think one of the main principles in human capital development is leaving nobody behind, because we cannot be talking about human capital development when a segment of the society is left behind. So equity is very, very important. And again, to promote equity, civil society have to play a very, very important role in promoting this equity. So as we talk about human capital development, we should be looking at the equity aspect of it, looking at the social divide, and people that are on the weaker side of the social divide, I think they need more attention than any other person. So people living with disability should be, of course, they are part and parcel of it, but we need more civil society action to really enforce that. I think those are the couple of areas. Somebody talk about how do we ensure that the MDAs are acting this urgency on human capital development is part of their vision. Again, that is why we are discussing. And the main objective of this network is to engender human capital development at all levels, including the level of MDAs as well. And that is why we're having this conversation. So I know those are the few comments I would like to add to what Olumide has already said.
So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gafar, thank you, Dr. Olumide, and thank you, our esteemed participants, for this opportunity to have this conversation this afternoon. So the next one, like we have earlier laid the foundation that this is going to be participatory. So for the next 20 minutes, we are going to go to the group work. We actually was meant to do it for 30 minutes, but because we want to finish this by 2, we don't intend keeping people beyond like 2 hours. So we will be extending. It should not extend just beyond 10 minutes. So in view of that, our group work will just go for the next 20 minutes. So we've pre-assigned everyone to the various groups. So once the group opens, we expect you to accept your group and go to the group as indicated while registering. So we will lay the background to the various group work at the moment. So we have 3 groups: economic and employment, we have poverty and security, and we have demographic dividend. Dr. Gafar, over to you to share how the group work will go, the questions and how we address the issues. Over to you, Dr. Gafar.
Sorry, I was mentioned earlier on. I was saying we are going to have 3 groups. First group is we'll be discussing economy and employment. The second group, poverty and security. The third group, demographic dividend and conflict. So the question we'll be asking, we'll be discussing. Number 1, we'll be looking at what are the implications of human capital development for each of the dimensions. If our group is discussing economic and employment, we'll be looking at what are the implications of human capital development for that dimension. Luckily for this group, Olumide has helped us a lot to look at what is the implication of human capital development for that economic growth. Then we'll look at what evidence do we need to generate and how do we use the evidence, and lastly, what challenges do we envisage or what are the opportunities. I think that is what each of the group will be looking at to quickly discuss briefly what are the implications of human capital development for the subject they are discussing, what evidence do we need to generate, how do we use the evidence, and what opportunities and challenges do we envisage during generation and use of evidence. So those are the 4 questions we'll deal with, and we hope to do this in the next 10 or 15 minutes or thereabout and report back. Hopefully somebody will be in the group taking a note for us.
Yes. So right now, the various group already have their people note takers, but the facilitator for each group should please take note and ensure that everybody participate actively. So see you in the next 15, 20 minutes back in the main room. Okay, so we are welcome back. Just a few more minutes for other people to join from the various rooms they have. Yes.
So you cut us off before we finished. Sachi, are you still there? Hello, Saji?
Yes, I'm here, Juliana.
I want to just excuse us. Saji, please, you are saying that the biggest challenge is what?
It's technology.
Okay.
I think that we're going to have a lot of resistance.
Quickly, because of timing. Yes, it's an.
I think we're going to have.
Okay, hello.
Let us have some peace now. Please.
Okay, so Juliana, I think we are all back to the main room now.
Yes, I knew, but you cut us off before we finished. But it's fine. So thank you. I got that. I got the bit about technology. Thank you to everyone in group 3. That was an awesome contribution, participation from everybody. Thank you. So maybe Saji, you want to present for us before you go? When it's time?
Okay.
I honestly
okay, so let's start from you, Juliana, since you are ready.
Okay, thank you. Saji, please go ahead before you go.
So okay, let's start from group 3, from the demographic dividend before we'll go that way around. Thank you.
Okay, in group 3 precisely, we discussed the challenges of the fact that we have a very robust group in the working group that are supposed to actually contribute to the GDP, but that the challenge is that we don't have sufficient evidence. So we were expecting that after almost 10 years of population projections and data that are inconsistent from the National Population Commission, there should be another census that would give us real numbers and real people and know precisely where they are. Then we also discussed the issue of our educational curriculum, and that we need to look at how our education curriculum can further, be tuned towards making our youth fit for purpose, that by the time they get out of school, they are skilled enough to be able to deliver, democratic dividends even in their communities, and that will be linked to their ability to put food on the table, and therefore reduce the issue of nutritional challenges, malnutrition, undernutrition, and acute nutrition of different classes that is currently also backwardly linked to their inability to be educationally productive, because they will have lost a lot of cognitive opportunities because they were stunted or because they had nutritional challenges as younger people. So if they become more productive in the context of their future work, that they will eventually be able to deliver children that will not be stunted. They will be able to put food on the table of their families, and therefore, we will not have the kind of challenges. Then we also looked at what would be the challenges in collecting that data and evidence for our legislators to be able to take appropriate decisions, whether on our curriculum, whether on the kind of skills that young people need to have, whether on how the young people are given the opportunities that are necessary for them to outperform their peers, in other African countries and beyond now. So all of these are the things that we discussed. And we said the biggest challenge that we'll have to gather evidence will be resistance to the use of technology, especially because of political influences that have been, associated with collecting demographic data since independence. Thank you.
Many thanks. Dr. Saji, for that. So, okay. can I call on group 2? That's poverty and security. And Dr. Gafar, you might need to take over from here. So group 2, poverty. So Honorable Kennedy, do you wish to do that for group 2? Hello? Okay, so I think I'll just go ahead and present on behalf of group 2. So for the group, we looked at the issues and we looked at poverty and security. And why we looked at it, we identified that the poverty level of citizens across board is, has led to the need, it's being controlled by the need to control resources that, the poverty rate is a few of the population are controlling the poverty, are controlling the riches and the wealth of the economy. The economic power are with a few. And because of the economic power are with a few, the others really wants to also meet up with that. And that has led to a lot of insecurity, like we have the bandwidth and the terrorism and the others that we have right now. And this has also led to the issue of food insecurity, because like we have in the Northeast right now, like in Taraba State, that we have the herdsmen and the herdsmen and farmers. Because of that, the farmers are not able to go to farm. It has led to low productivity within that sector. And because of that, there is scarcity and things are actually increasing. And also because of that, which has led to insecurity, people are not able to access the basic needs that they can, like health, like education and the rest. And that has actually led to low efficiency in across the different sectors of the economy. And we also want to discuss that what are the evidence that we need to generate. We actually agreed that we already have a lot of evidence and data in place that we only need to harness, to identify and harness, to collate and harness them together and use them appropriately to substantiate the engagement for women, creating a sense of urgency. And that if we do not bring this as a priority to our political leaders and everybody is engaged, especially citizens, active citizens engaged in terms of translating this data, we might not be able to go forward. Also, we identify sources like NDHS, we identify the World Bank, the National Planning Commission, the National Population, and that sometimes we also do some of this intervention and programming without giving consideration to our rapid growing population. We should be we should be seen as our strength in diversity rather than the problem we might be associating with this. Also, we identify the issue of security because we also identify that security issues. We need to bring link up human capital development more with the impact that security is having on the society, on the human capital development. And one thing that we identify is that it's high time we start putting human face with these issues and just speaking about these issues in silo. We can use the use of pictures and the rest to transmit and translate this information to the implementers so that they are able to use it. We also identify one of the gaps that we identified in terms of using this is that we are not able to translate data. Most time we have all these data, but they're not being communicated appropriately. So in that we said we should be able to develop briefs or summaries or synopses that will speak to this issue in simple and clear languages that can be used for policy implementation. We also mentioned that we can strengthen collaboration and partnership across the various stakeholders. And in that we identify that unlike the network needs to be, the members of network should deploy the use of peer learning, whereby they're able to share experiences of what is happening across their various sectors and across the country and use them appropriately. We also identified that among the policy makers, there is need for us to have what we call the peer comparison, that we've seen that in our political class in the country, our political leaders tend to respond to peer comparison. So because of that, we need to engage things like scorecard when they're comparing each other. So we might want to transfer some of this evidence into this to create that sense of agency and engage the various layers of parasite of governance that needs to be engaged to take action. Thank you. That is summary for what we did in group 2 on poverty and security. Over group 1.
Okay, thank you very much, Anu. Dr. Emmanuel, can we have the summary of what your group did, please? Dr. Emmanuel Akonde, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, just give me a second, please.
Okay.
Yes, so in our group, we actually look at the implication of the human development, capital development. We look at the problem, and we realize that the low human development index is actually a concern. And we see that when that trend actually continues, then there will be more poverty along the line. Then we'll see that there will be more unemployment, and there will be a problem of inequality. Then we actually veered into the evidence. Then we look at data. So what can we do with the data? Do we actually have enough data? And how can we improve on the data we have? Then on that particular note, we actually veered into how can we identify precisely if we have a problem. Then we look at maybe school enrollment, gender-wise, in terms of, then we can look at maybe the state-wise as well, the school enrollment of the girls, the school enrollment of the boys, then the years of schooling, how many of them actually started from primary to secondary, from secondary to the university. So the data set that the data we can generate from that can actually serve as a policy for government. Then we look at how do we use these evidences? Fine. That is where we go into the university. Precisely, we realize that our problem in the university has to do with our problem of unemployment actually started from university. Let us look at our curriculum. We need, a lot of things needs to be addressed. Then we actually talk about the training for our teachers as well. So the evidence of how the input and how it translates into employment or output, employment as an output. The area of demarcation, it has to do with we identify some structural and fundamental rigidities. So then we actually see that as a way where government can actually improve on. Then we look at the opportunities and challenges of generating those evidences. And for that, then we actually identify some of the problems after citing some examples, some of the problems we have maybe in some of our institutions. I actually alluded to the fact that there was a research I was trying to carry out with colleagues in Italy. And I was in the INEC office, and those data sets were not even available in INEC. And they asked me that maybe I need to go to another institution and stuff like that. So those are the problems we have. If I want to make a policy that we improve employment problem, that will solve employment problem in our country, then I must be able to have data set that will speak into that particular problem. But we do not have. So like a network like this or another institution, we can actually partner with some other institution that actually can delve into that and get some of those data for us. Then we look at some of the opportunities we have. Government can actually increase funding for education, to solve that problem. And we see that involving private sector as well will actually play a larger role. Then improving the employment opportunities in Nigeria. So that and some of the things were raised, and some questions were raised. Some of the questions that were raised, virtually all the questions that were raised, were actually very, very important. So those are the things we discussed. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Dr. Akonde and the entire Group 1 team. So I hope I have the floor for us to move to the final section, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So I think on this note, I will, on behalf of the other co-conveners, I would like to appreciate each and every one of us. To me, I've learned a lot, especially from the breakout section, and I joined Group 2. It was very, very interesting, and listening to the feedback from other groups as well. I think it's really worth our time that we've invested on this webinar. So I would like to appreciate each and every one of us for the contribution. So in line with the objective of this webinar, I think we are going to further synthesize discussion, suggestions, and contribution, so that we are going to turn them into a sort of a technical brief, which we are going to share back. But it's not going to end there. Part of what we are trying to look at is that if we have a clear understanding of what evidence should we collect, how should we collect it, what are the opportunities and challenges, we can look at maybe a couple of states to pilot generating this evidence, translating this knowledge we just acquired into practice, so that we generate evidence in a couple of states to start with, and then hopefully we can look for mechanism for escalating that to all the 36 states and FCT as well, so that as a network we are well equipped in terms of the evidence needed to make a case for the human capital development action. So like I said earlier on, we are going to collate everything, turn into the technical brief. We are going to share it back, of course, for your further input, then before we disseminate it. But part of what we are looking at is how do we pilot this evidence generation in a couple of states, maybe one from the south, one from the north, and of course look for resources to replicate them in other states as well. And then, of course, will depend on your suggestion as well. If you know, any organization that want to partner on this for us to get it done in specific states, we are open to discussion on this. So on this note, I would like to find out from Aanu and Juliana any specific announcement before we close the webinar. Aanu, Juliana.
Okay, I was waiting for Juliana if she had any. So, but for me, I would just thank everyone, as you said, leveraging, and I will imply that all the attendees to please follow the social media handles of the network, and that is ACD_network NG across Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you are yet to be a member, we will send you invites. Please join the network, and you will be getting more engaged via that platform. So I will look forward to engaging with you in the nearest future. Thank you, and over to you, Dr. Gafar and Juliana.
Okay, Juliana, any specific contribution, comments? And from the members of the audience as well, maybe if there's any specific thing that we want to add before we close the session. Okay, in the absence of that, I would like to let you know that we are going to share all presentations and other documents. We are going to share them via email. And then please let's stay in touch. If there are specific suggestions in terms of the activities of this network, let us know. The way you participate, I think, is quite impressive, and let's continue that conversation. Like I said, tell you, we are working very, very hard to ensure that we are able to start generating evidence in a couple of states, which we can use to escalate to others as well. So on this note, I would like to thank you very much for participating. Thanks for your contribution, and let's stay in touch for further discussion towards moving the agenda of human capital development forward in Nigeria. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Ayomide. We're grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It has been a wonderful, it has been a very, very wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we really have comments too.
Great. Yeah. Somebody should.